The Oklahoma City Thunder fall to the Cleveland Cavaliers, snapping a 15-game winning streak. Is there cause for concern after this loss? Did this game live up to the hype, and so much more?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Ryland Styles. Follow me on Twitter at Ryland_Styles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, the Thunder lose to Cleveland. They snap a 15-game winning streak, their first loss since December 1st, over a month since they've lost a basketball game. SGA had some uncharacteristic turnovers. Isaiah Hartenstein's defense we'll talk about. Jalen Williams' fourth quarter, the rebounding, and is there any long-term concerns from this game? Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Go check out Game Time today. Download their app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Well, this game, like when you really put it into perspective, did everyone who watched that game and rooted for the Thunder want the Thunder to win? Of course, that's every game. But it was especially big because of how the NBA marketed it. But when you take a step backwards and just look at this neutrally, it's your third straight game against a legitimate title contender. It's your third straight game against a healthy, legitimate title contender. And it's your third straight game in that setting without Chet Holmgren, Alex Caruso, and AJ Mitchell. Now, of course, it's next man up. And the players, the coaches, they're all going to give you the same lip service that they've given you since the days of the Peach Basket. Since old James Naismith was climbing on a ladder to pick the pumpkin out of the freaking basket, right? Like, it's always been next man up. But guess what? We're not in the locker rooms. Like, we're not a part of the organization. Are in the locker room sometimes, but not a part of the organization. And we can be honest. Like, J-Dub, of course, is not going to say, oh, guys, we just can't compete until we get healthy. And that's why that Jaylen Williams said it's a loser mentality to, view it that way. And it absolutely is a loser mentality if you're actually playing the game. If you're just talking about the game, it's just the facts of life. Like, not having Chet Holmgren in this specific matchup is brutal. You look at how many times that Cleveland was able to pick apart the Thunder's stellar defense, which has spent the entire year in first place of the league and is top to bottom the best defense in this league, but also one of the most historic defenses of all time. And they picked it apart in the pick and roll because, number one, you only had one legitimate center. Jalen Williams really struggles in the pick and roll just in general, but especially in a matchup like this where you have to come all the way out to the perimeter, he really struggles. And once you drew out Hartenstein and drew out Jalen Williams, J-Will, to the perimeter in the pick and roll, nobody was left home for the roller. Nobody was left at the rim. So you either had to concede an easy layup or dive in to the basket and either foul or let up a spray out for an open three. So they just diced you apart in that way, which if you have two bigs, and even if you just have Chet Holmgren, who had 7 blocks the last time that these two teams played, and is just a much better athlete for this specific role, right? For this job, Chet Holmgren is way better at recovery. He's way better at covering ground to mitigate the advantages that Cleveland can create in the pick and roll. Like, if you have Chet Holmgren, this game changes entirely defensively. And then offensively, I mean, who knows how much it changes. So this is a guy who can get hot from three. This is a guy who can put his head down and go to the rim. This is a guy who is drawing fouls at an unbelievable clip prior to his injury, albeit a very small sample size this season. So yes, losing Chet hurts every game, no matter if you play Cleveland or if you play Charlotte, but it especially hurts in this game. And then Caruso. Okay, you can say, well, you've navigated the majority of this season without Chet, and you'll have to continue to do so moving forward. Fine. But Caruso, the day that the Thunder acquired him, Like their biggest tagline about him was how good he is at scaling up defensively to defend bigger players. Ding, ding, ding. You needed him to scale up and defend Mobley. He was not there tonight. He was hurt. He was literally there, but he was not on the court. He was in street clothes tonight for Oklahoma City. And then you compound it with AJ Mitchell. And you might be saying, well, it's just AJ Mitchell. It's just a second round rookie. No. Like AJ Mitchell is a guy who stabilizes an offense that sputters countless times whenever he's not in. And even when he is in, they can still be liable to sputter at times offensively. He just makes the car go and the car get up the road as a lead guard, which they were missing tonight, especially when Cleveland went into zone, which part of that was on their starters, not their bench. But nonetheless, they had these sputtering moments offensively to where you really could have used AJ Mitchell. That being said, with all of that kind of on the table, the Thunder were in this game from wire to wire. This was one of the best games on the NBA's calendar so far this year. They marketed it as such, and it lived up to that marketing to be such. And to barely lose this game on the road to a team who's lost one time at home, and that one loss came, I think it was like Veterans Day or like 6 days after Veterans Day, before Turkey Day for sure. Like, this is an unbelievable team in Cleveland, and you just didn't have the formula tonight. Now, this is not your formula to beat Cleveland just any old night, but under these conditions, under these circumstances, you needed a special game from Shai. I think at best you got a mediocre game from Shai. You needed a outlier three-point shooting night where you were just blitzing the nets. You did not get that. And then you needed Jalen Williams to just take over. And I think that Jalen Williams, his game is a bit more complicated to talk about because of how good it was for 3 quarters. And then in the fourth quarter, he shied away a bit. Part of that was the zone. Part of that was, I think, wanting to get SGA going. It's a different environment because the Thunder purposefully started Shai in that fourth quarter. And so Jalen Williams ends up with 3 shot attempts. And really, when the game was still in the balance, 2. And so all those factors were working against you. And what I would say is, because I can already hear you typing away, well, Donovan Mitchell had a terrible game. Credit to Lou Dort and Cason Wallace, number 1, for that. But number 2, yes, they had one factor working against them, right? They had a bad Donovan Mitchell game. Arguably, the worst Donovan Mitchell game you can ever have. That is a fact. They also got 2 pretty unworldly games from Allen and Mobley, and they also had the Max Strus game and the Ty Jerome game all at one time. So you level those things out some, and that changes the game as well. So again, I just don't think that the sample size is indicative and worthy of concern. The biggest thing that people have concerns about, I think, is the rebounding. And hello, there's a 7-foot guy on the bench right now. The Thunder, like, I hate the notion that's already been spread around right now that the Thunder have once again, for the second straight year, been unraveled by rebounding and been unraveled by offensive boards, which the Cavs got timely offensive boards in this game, and you cannot dispute that. Even though on second chance points, the difference was 4. Cleveland had 4 more second chance points than Oklahoma City did, but again, it was timely, and the rebounding battle was lost, 51-43 by Oklahoma City. But they did go address that. We just haven't gotten to see it yet. Like, we haven't gotten to see Chet and Hartenstein play together yet. So that's where it's tough, to where I know after every single loss, especially in a football state, you want this to be a football mentality. It's over. You got to fire this guy. You've got to cut this guy. You've got to move this guy up the depth chart. What are they doing? And you're just hairs on fire after every single loss in football. And believe me, you had a lot of them this year. So I know that you know what I'm talking about. Especially to Tennessee. Shout out to the Vols. But, that's just not the case with the NBA in general, but especially not the case with, okay, what would you point to as the weaknesses in this particular game? Rebounding. Well, Chet can come back and like that could be fixed instantly to where there's nothing to harp on if the fix is already in-house. Okay. Turnovers. Now, this is 2 straight games where you've had some head-scratching Westbrookian turnovers from Shai, and you've had turnovers from other guys as well. That's 2 games, and that needs to stop. Starting now, you need to get back on track with your ball security. But it's just not to the point of harping yet for me. The fouling, I think, comes with it. Like, I think that comes with the territory of being a smaller team. You're obviously going to have to foul more. Now, what I think is the problem, like what I think you can extrapolate past this game, the silly fouls have to stop. Particularly with Isaiah Hartenstein, who's done this his entire career, and even in Oklahoma City, like the silly fouls. Like, sometimes you have to give up on a play because you're too valuable for this team. Even if they're just perfectly healthy, you're too valuable. But especially right now, when your next option is Kenrich Williams and Jay Will, you're too valuable to be giving away just swipe at the ball fouls. You just cannot do that. I know that's going to suck to lose that possession, quote unquote, like to be on the wrong end of that possession. It's better long term to keep you on the floor, though. And when you get into foul trouble, like Hartenstein did, like Shai did, giving away that charge was just silly. You are a athletic, top-notch defender. Go challenge the shot. And if you get a foul that way, who cares? But don't take a charge when you're in the middle of the paint and you're inside the restricted area. Like, those two things were massive turning points. And in the moment, it's a blip on the radar because Mark has that philosophy of keeping guys in through foul trouble. And you just kind of see them continue to play. And at the end of the day, neither one of them foul out. So you think, well, they didn't foul out. Who really cares? When you're in foul trouble, you cannot defend with the level of physicality that is required, especially against a team that has Mobley and Allen and all of these guys. You just cannot do it. You can't box out with the intensity. You can't chase loose balls with the intensity. You can't wall up at the rim with the intensity. You cannot play the Thunder style of ball if you're in foul trouble. So that is a massive deal. And for Hartenstein, he's the only one of the foul trouble group that I'd say it's a legitimate concern, because this has been a season-long trend for him. But, that's one thing you can kind of take away and say, yeah, that's legitimate. There's one other thing that you can take away and say, yeah, that's legitimate. I'll let you know what that is coming up. And then we're going to get into some individual performances. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Ultimate GM. The brand new mobile game that I'm really excited about is Ultimate GM College Basketball Head Coach. It's incredible. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, then this is your chance to step into those shoes. In Ultimate College Basketball HC, you can control every detail of your program, from the recruiting players to hiring and firing coaching staffs, to overseeing training camps, to handling NIL deals and managing scholarships. It's all in the palm of your hands. So go there right now, because when it comes to game time, you've got to draw up the perfect offensive play. You've got to set your strategy, and you've got to be responsible for getting the team a win. The way you play won't just affect the current season, but it will also shape the future of your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. So here's a special offer. Locked On NBA listeners can use the promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, LOCKEDONCBB, the game store, to get a free boost for your program. It's the perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. So go download Ultimate College Basketball HC. Just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up in the App Store, Ultimate College Basketball HC, to begin your coaching legacy today. Go check it out today. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. We mentioned the silly fouls. That is a legit concern I have for Hartenstein specifically, that I think you can take from this game. You can, measure it out a little bit long term. The second one would be the zone defense and playing against a zone defense. On the front end of this conversation, we have to just tip the cap to Cleveland. That was not only a savvy adjustment in the sense of, just simply deploying it, like deploying that adjustment, but to be able to call out a zone and to run it in the midst of a game that's already had its game flowing, that's already in progress and already down to the wire in the fourth quarter, and then run it that well and execute it that well, it's almost impossible to pull off. And very few teams can do that. And sometimes you get into trouble whenever you try to go to a zone, right? Because it's just so abnormal from your typical style, and it can really throw you. But in this one, man, did it ever work out for Cleveland? And did it ever discombobulate the Thunder? And a year ago, the Thunder's half-court offense was in the 50th percentile, straight up average against zone defense. For as good as that team was, like for the top 5 offense, top 5 defense, all that stuff from last year, 57 wins, they mustered up 1.038 points per possession against zone defense. Now the numbers are a little bit wacky this year because it's a smaller sample size, because even that look from a year ago was like all encompassing, playoffs and regular season and the full regular season. Whereas this year, it's just however many games it's been. But on top of that, you're not facing zone nearly as much as you're facing man. So they have risen it up to the 73 percentile right now against zone. But I just think that they still struggle to get into a flow and a rhythm against the zone defense. And that's 2 years running now. With that being said, the reason I would say, and I like to do this, instead of concern, I'd like to say monitor. I would monitor the Thunder against zone because I think that there's an easy fix. Now, I could be wrong, but I think that when you have Hartenstein planted at the elbow as this hub, in the middle, and you can space the floor, you can really dictate the terms of that zone defense to your advantage. And whenever you get Chet back, and a lot of this is going to center around Chet, with Chet's ability to not only cut but shoot the 3 ball, you can then play this 4-out 1-in style against zone. You can have cuts off of that. You can have facilitation off of that. You can just do a lot of different things with Hartenstein's passing, both on the perimeter and at the elbow and the high post, that you just did not have access to a year ago. To where maybe that helps you elevate your game in zone. But it's clear that this is like a trend here with the Thunder in zone defense. So it's worth monitoring. I just think that they do have some solutions to it, moving forward. Now, let's talk SGA. We're going to talk SGA. We'll talk J-Dub. We'll talk Hartenstein. SGA, his box score looks beautiful. He was 31 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 48% shooting, 16% shooting from beyond the arc, 1 for 6, and 4 for 4 at the free throw line. But you look at the fouls and turnovers. 5 fouls, 5 turnovers. We've already mentioned and harped on what turnovers, what fouls do for, the ability for you to play defense, especially for a guy like this who's going to make his killing not just off like solid point of attack defense, but really make his killing by being a hound for entry passes and trying to poke balls out in the passing lanes. And then also, just trying to play up on you and get a ball jarred loose and create a turnover that way for the Thunder defense. Like that obviously changes how Shai can play. Where the big concern lies was the turnovers. Because tonight, it wasn't just one form of turnover, right? It wasn't just, hey, Cleveland is blitzing the ever-living you-know-what out of SGA, and he's getting doubled, and he's just losing the ball. That happens some. It's not just, hey, these guys are not on the same page tonight, they weren't in sync, and Shai just threw away the ball. That happens some. But you know what it felt like happened a lot more? Was what happened on Sunday, where it's like Shai gets in this zone, and it's Westbrookian. It is. I mean, he goes up in the air without quite knowing what he wants to do, and if you do that at the wrong time, it can't possibly lead to anything but a turnover. You just can't. And so, like, that stuff has to be cleaned up a bit, and that's something that like literally never happened to Shai until Sunday. So, yes, it has to be cleaned up, but also I don't know that it's worth a whole lot of angst about, because like, yes, it sucked in this game that he had the ball, that he had the turnovers, and he did it against Boston. This is a complete outlier. And the only other possession from Shai that you could question was the want to hunt a 2-for-1 at the end of the half. Now, this is something that you have to live with. It's kind of like, war in baseball and like the shift until Manfred Bandit or whatever. It's like those kind of things where like old school baseball guys might be like, average matters more than war or whatever, but you've lost the war, man. Like literally, no pun intended, you've lost the war. It does not matter anymore. You can complain about the 2-for-1. It doesn't matter anymore. It is all these guys do at every level is hunt the 2-for-1. If Oklahoma had a shot clock in high school, they'd hunt the 2-for-1. Everybody does it. So I don't blame that a ton. It did spiral in the negative direction on the Thunder, but that just comes with the territory of going for the 2-for-1. Me personally, in that exact situation, I wouldn't have gone 2-for-1 there. My philosophy on the 2-for-1 is risk reward. Like, I think that the risk far outweighed the reward, because even if Shai makes that three, it's not a knockout punch at all, not even close, especially not on the road. So, you don't, if he hits that three, it's not like you get this massive pop from the crowd and now you're up, 12 and now it feels like everything's spiraling on you heading into halftime. You hit that three and you get the ball back with 12 seconds left. You missed the three, you still get the ball back with 12 seconds left, but D. Mitch, who's been awful all night, gets a two-handed slam to energize their own crowd. So I just don't think that the risk was worth the reward in that scenario. But again, if you're at home and you're up by 9, then yeah, it's absolutely worth it, because the risk is worth the reward there. But that's just not how things are processed in the NBA with this specific philosophy. Like, it's just all or nothing, and teams are going to see the greater the greater side of things as like, hey, if we have more possessions, we have more chances to score. When you have the MVP with more chances to score, he's going to score, and when you score, you're going to win. So it's that simple. And so, like, yeah, the 2-for-1 thing I didn't love, it's going to happen. What I think with Shai's game was that Cleveland is uniquely positioned to force him into a game that is pretty in the box score, but when you watch it, it's not Shai. Like, when you watch it, it's not, oh my gosh, it's not Sunday, right? It's not the Celtics game. It's not the New York game. Like, it's not these games that you think of and say, wow, that's why he's the MVP. It's because Dean Wade is fantastic defensively on Shai as a point of attack guy. Now, he's not a Shai stopper. And Herb Jones is the closest thing to a Shai stopper. That's also kind of fool's gold. He's not a Shai stopper either. But what Dean Wade has the benefit of doing is that Dean Wade, he is a speed bump at worst for SGA, where most guys aren't even a blip on the radar. They're not even that little gravelly part of the road on the highway where your tires shake to make sure you're awake. Like, most guys are nothing against Shai. But Dean Wade can hold you up, can compete, and can force you into discomfort whenever you're in the mid-range and you're on the perimeter, that when you finally do work past him, which is a very tall task comparatively speaking to other players, you're then met with elite rim protection. And Cleveland's a very tough matchup. So with that considered, that it's a very tough matchup, 48% shooting is really good from Shai. It just is a result of like how it came, right? Like, how did you get to these numbers? Well, what people are going to remember is that fourth quarter where Shai goes 2 for 5, and the Thunder really needed something bigger to pull off this upset win. And it was going to be an upset, because even though you're on a 15-game winning streak, you're on the road, you're down these guys, and Vegas picked the Cavs minus 2.5. I thought that Lou Dort was forced into some bad situations. And to the Cavs' credit, it kind of goes back to what the Thunder have always talked about, and Mark's been open about. Whenever you're playing a team like Cleveland, like Dallas, like Boston, like New York, when you're playing these high-level teams, you cannot take away everything. You've got to just sacrifice something. And in this game, it was Max Strus. In the Mavs series, it was PJ Washington. You've got to just give them something and live with the results. Max Strus was incredible. Cleveland wanted to live with Lou Dort, and Lou Dort was not incredible. And so, like, you saw in that fourth quarter where Lou Dort is being put in these spots where you have to pass it to him because he's the guy available. He's the guy open. And the Cavs are playing him in a way in which they're forcing him to dribble. It's not in a place where you want to be with Lou Dort offensively, especially down the stretch. And then he's forcing these mid-range jumpers that just have little to no chance. Even the one that he did hit, he was on his behind when he hit it. I mean, it just was not a quality shot, even though the shot went in. So, like, the Cleveland Cavaliers did a great job of forcing some bad efforts and discomfort. Coming up, let's talk J-Dub, let's talk Hartenstein, and more. But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at Game Time. Go check out Game Time, because I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending minor league baseball games with my dad as a child. You go see the stars of tomorrow in baseball today in Oklahoma City. You can go do that. You can share that energy and excitement and unforgettable summer nights with Game Time. Game Time makes it easier for you to get tickets than ever before. It is the tickets for your favorite events, whether you go there for sports or theaters or whatever. They have everything for you at Game Time. And I love the new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff and shows you only incredible deals that give you great seats. So you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of dots on some map. Boom, here's the best tickets for you. I also love the all-in pricing feature. You toggle on all-in pricing, everything right there. No surprises at checkout. It's your total cost, your absolute total cost right up front before you even get to checkout. That way you know what you're getting into. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Go download the Game Time app, create your account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Go download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I thought that this was one of the better games from Jalen Williams, J-Dub. Now, this goes back to what we mentioned with Mitchell. Like, did you get the Mitchell game that you wanted for Cleveland? Absolutely not. This was the worst Mitchell game you could ever have. But you made up for it with other outliers, right? With other improvements, with other boosts. Did you get a much better J-Dub game than you've gotten in the past? You absolutely did. Like, this was J-Dub for 3 quarters looking the part of what you wanted to see. And in that fourth quarter, when you're expecting fourth quarter dub, he takes 3 shots, and only 2 of them came with the game in the balance. That's tough. Now, to J-Dub's defense, it is awkward to play one style, right, where you're the guy to start a fourth quarter. And now, all of a sudden, the actual guy is there to start the fourth quarter with you. That creates a weird dynamic. Now, Mark did say that, like, even before the game tipped off this afternoon, he told Shai that the plan was to switch up his rotational pattern. That way they could have the advantage of starting Shai in the fourth. And on the scoreboard, it looked ingenious. And I tweeted this out in live time before Mark said that. You can go check the receipts. You know, Mark does not do this whole, like, oh, you're in foul trouble, so we must sit you. He doesn't believe in that. He's made that abundantly clear since the day he got to Oklahoma City. So when he took Shai out, it felt like, hey, he's going to start the fourth quarter. And then he did. And on the scoreboard, again, that was a great decision because you had the chance to really wrestle things away up 1. You're nursing this lead. I think he got to like a 3-point lead immediately when the fourth quarter started. And you had a chance to like wrangle away the game. It didn't pan out that way. And so J-Dub, yes, a disappearing act in the fourth quarter, if you will. But I think that some of that is the context of like the lineups and the situations. Does he have to be better in that spot? Absolutely he does. But that's like part of the reason why he wasn't. That being said, you have to leave this game more encouraging than you came into it for J-Dub. Because offensively, 25 points on 53% shooting from the floor, 2 for 7 from 3, 5 for 7 at the line, 7 free throw attempts. More than Shai, more than anybody on this Thunder team. Tied with Mobley for the second high in the game. Allen had 10. Like, J-Dub did everything you wanted him to do. Everything that you've been clamoring for him to do in the comment section, everything that we've talked about in this podcast, he did in this game for 3 quarters. And that's significant improvement. And it's a pretty big surprise because the Cavs have the perimeter point of attack defenders who, sure, they're no Lou Dort, but they put up a heck of a fight, and then they get you inside to Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, and what are you going to do? There's just nothing much to do there for a guy who makes his money at the elbow and at the rim. But J-Dub did a great job. His best play of the night, and one of his best plays in months, was the challenge from Mark where it went off of Struce's foot. The Thunder get the ball back with 6 seconds, and they inbound to J-Dub. J-Dub takes the inbound, dribbles it kind of like in a loop to the nail where he does his simple mid-range fadeaway, rise up fadeaway 9 times out of 10, but this was the 10th time where he like acts like he's going to take it up, keeps his pivot foot down, spins around the world, and then finger rolls it in all in 6 seconds. It looked very, very close on the first look, but they, of course, reviewed it during the stoppage and said it was good, so it did count. But like that was one of his better games and better plays offensively in a while. And then defensively, J-Dub was just elite, man. Like elite defensively. 3 steals on a block, on top of a lot of shot deterrence from him. Lou Dort was elite defensively, locking down D. Mitch. Cason Wallace was really good on every aspect of the game. He was good defensively. He was good offensively. He went 3 for 3 from 3. That was big from Caso. And then he chipped in some shots where he's just relocating off ball. He's slipping to the dunker spot. He's drifting into the paint. Like, he's being there for you as a safety net whenever the Cavs crash on drivers, and he's the beneficiary of it. He did a really good job on that aspect. I thought that Isaiah Joe had moments. Of course, you want to see him shoot better than 2 for 6. That's what he's kind of paid to do. That's what his archetype is designed to do. The shots have to go down eventually. Jay Will, we've already mentioned, not a good game from him defensively in the pick and roll especially. Did make his only shot. Did have a big rebound in this game. Isaiah Joe did to keep a possession alive that had the Thunder score. Jay Will had 2 rebounds in this game, and that was kind of it for his night. Ultimately, you only lost the scoreboard by 2 when Jay Will was in his 10 minutes. Wiggins was massive. Kenrich, massive as well in his limited time. Kenrich, he just is going to have a tough time like being his maximized version against Cleveland because of their size. But he did give you something in this game. And then with Wiggins, he was lights out offensively. He ran the floor very hard in transition. He got to his spots in the half court. He scored 11 points. He was a +4. He continues the trend of getting more minutes, 21 minutes tonight. Really 22 because it was 21.3. So more minutes tonight, more buckets, more help for an offense that throughout the game needed help. But ultimately, neither side had a double-digit lead ever. The Thunder actually had the largest lead of the night with 9. Cleveland had a 7-point lead. And there was 30 lead changes, 8 ties in this one, and Cleveland wins, in large part due to the fact that they shot 41% from 3. OKC shot 35% from 3. So for as much as we're going to talk about like everything else that happened, the +4 and second chance points for Cleveland, the +6 and points in the paint for Cleveland, if you make your threes, and even with all the context we've tried to lay out, this game could be a bit different for both sides. Nonetheless, though, let me know what you think about the game tonight. And for a special show that you're going to know why I'm asking for this coming up, leave below your biggest concern about this Thunder team. What has you in trepidation about the Thunder? Leave that in the YouTube comment section or on Twitter at Ryland_Styles. You'll see why tomorrow. And until then, be good and be good to one another.